Hello and welcome back to Tranquility du Jour, nourishing conversations about living a full and meaningful life with doses of tranquility. This is episode 568, and I'm your host, Kimberly Wilson, bringing you tranquility since 2005. So today we are talking about managing resources. And when I say resources, I mean like time, energy, and money, which are all things that can be a bit challenging during the holiday season. So I thought this would be helpful to just share a few tips and ideas that might help as we move into this time of the year that is known for its hustle and bustle. So I'm really excited to share this episode with you, and I hope that it resonates, and I hope that you too will find it helpful as you think about, all right, how do I protect myself during this craziness? And meaning, how do we just make sure that we are taking good care of ourselves and all these resources that we have? And the other thing I want to mention too is just, I'll do a little shout out. Hip Tranquil Chick's 15th birthday is this month, and the Daybooks is 10 years. It's funny, I did a blog post over the weekend on the Daybook, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes, which can be found, by the way, kimberlywilson.com/568. But anyway, as I did that, I was like, later that night, I thought, oh my gosh, the first one was 2011. Well, I released it 2011, right? And it was for 2012. And so I was like, oh my gosh, it's 10 years. So I wanted to share just a little snippet from each of those that I thought might be kind of fun as we, reflect on our journey together, because I know many of you have been around since those days. So thank you, thank you, thank you. A heads up, I have just added a TDJ holiday pop-up, and that's happening on December 4th from 1 to 2 p.m. And there's a link to sign up in the show notes. It will take you to Zoom, and you will just put in your information to register. And then a few days before the event, I'll be sure to send a reminder. Now, during this event, which is really, I used to say 30 to 45 minutes, but it goes around 45. So go ahead and just carve out maybe an hour for yourself that afternoon if you can. And we'll be doing some journaling. So I'll share, of course, some journaling prompts. And then we'll also be doing some planning, right? As we look ahead and think about this brand new year that is around the corner. And speaking of the brand new year, be sure to join the waitlist for the TDJ annual program, which I have named Tranquility Coterie, which I'm really excited about. I was trying to come up with like a fun Frenchy name that really kind of embodied the essence. And Tim was like, what about coterie? And I was like, abso-freaking-lutely. So anyway, there is a link in the show notes to sign up to get on the wait list. And during the December 4th event, I will be revealing a bit about it and opening it up for registration. So hope that you'll be able to join us next year. Because one thing that is happening is I plan to, so I hate to say like I will, because I probably will. I plan to take the podcast every other week. I'm going to be cutting out TDJ Lives, which is something I've done for about 15 years seasonally. And I'm just trying to think of, as I try to manage my own resources, particularly of time and energy, of what can I let go of? And when you've been doing something for 15 years, it's kind of hard to let it go. But I just feel like I want to be able to have more time and energy to devote to A, my own learning and growth, but B, to the coterie next year. So I'll be focusing a lot more on them and nourishing them during the year. And never fear, I will still have events for the whole community, of course, virtual retreats and whatnot, but that is kind of the overarching plan. So again, if you're interested in the annual program, be sure to join us on the 4th. And if you miss us, no worries. You'll get the replay. And if you can, would love to have you. Also, for anyone who has lost a pet or is anticipating the loss of a pet, because that is super traumatic. Also, I'm hosting a free pet loss support group with a local vet here, a veterinary clinic actually here in Washington, D.C. And I would love to offer and open it up to you if that would be helpful for you. And there is a link in the show notes for that. And that's happening December 14th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All right. So let's dive in and let's talk time, energy, money. All right, so here are my 10 tips, and these are in Year of Tranquility, page 112 and 113, in case that's helpful for you and you'd like to follow along. So the first thing that I have here is really whenever we think about time and energy, I have number 1, take a Sabbath. So this is like a digital day off. Or it could be a few hours off, or maybe you even just turn your phone to airplane mode, which is what I have a tendency to do, and I really like that. So maybe skipping TV to read a book, meditate, bake a pie, take a walk, or volunteer. And note what's keeping you from your priorities and take a break from them. So maybe it's like, oh, I'm always on the phone, or I'm always replying immediately to emails and text messages, or looking at my phone every time a push notification comes through that someone's liked something, which I have never had those on, I must say. I can't imagine getting so many dings of like, oh, you have a new email, or oh, somebody liked something from 2 years ago. It's like, I don't need to know that, and I don't need my day interrupted for that. So for you, what might a Sabbath look like? Now, it doesn't have to be a full day. Again, it may be simply a few hours in a day where you're just like, I really just turn it off so I can hunker down and tune in to this experience and to what contributes to my values. One of the things I've been thinking a lot about, and we'll talk quite a bit about in the coterie next year, is how to make sure our time and our days align with our values. If we say health is really important to us, but we don't do anything throughout the week that nurtures our heart, our body for movement or nourishment from food, it's kind of like, is health really a priority or a value? And if it is, how can we make sure it gets into our days? All right, so number 1, take a Sabbath. Number 2, say no. All right, so you may have a tendency to raise your hand or take on that extra project. Consider saying, instead of absolutely no problem, I got that, no thank you, not right now. It will feel foreign, and then with practice, it'll become empowering. There is something very powerful about saying, no, that's just not going to work with my schedule right now, or no, unfortunately, I just don't have the energy for it, but let's circle back after the holidays, or let's circle back mid next year, whatever it might be, or just no, unfortunately, I just can't commit right now, but thank you for thinking of me. There's something really powerful about saying no, I think, especially for women, because we tend to want to please, right? Probably all humans want to please. Man, woman, non-binary, whatever, right? It's kind of at the heart of who we are. And yet, sometimes in the course of pleasing others, who suffers? Us, right? So thinking a bit more, particularly as we approach the holidays and there's so many options or, things you might be invited to or encouraged to do. Can you say no unless it's a full-hearted yes? Number 3 is organize. All right, so I actually love this one. So review your planner and note superfluous plans, commitments, or to-dos. Can any be completely removed or rearranged to fit better with your energy level? I do this often when I realize I've added too many output activities and not enough input time. So what I mean by output is having to be on, quote unquote, right? Like maybe you're teaching, you're sitting with clients, you are, with family, like large kind of family situation, things where you're not just chilling at home with a book, right? So some people, of course, if you're extroverted, you love that and you thrive on that. But others may not, or even if you're extroverted, may find that it's too much. So are there things that you could trim out? Also note how much time you spend on things like relationships, hobbies, exercise, internet, watching TV, and alone. Now, does this match your values? And no judgment, just notice. Number 4, create your MITs. So it's the start of the week. What are your most important tasks? And these are things that need to be completed this week due to deadlines, events, or priorities. Like, hello, this week in the States, it's Thanksgiving. So, one of those things probably for MITs is Thanksgiving meal. Even if you're home alone with your pet, your plant, one other family member, or a large family gathering, that is something that is probably an MIT that you're going to spend some time having a Thanksgiving meal, or maybe even making some yummy side dishes. So many great vegetarian side dishes, whatever it might be. That is an MIT, right? I need to kind of get this stuff made, or I need to get my meal planned for me and my pup staying home solo, right? Which is lovely. So just thinking about for you, what are your MITs this week? Set 3 to 5 each day, potentially, right? Or each week. And the each week is kind of for larger projects. Like say, for example, thinking about my MITs from last week, it was like working on getting the coterie plans kind of pulled together, right? So I spent a lot of time during the week getting my writing homework to my writing coach. Okay, that wasn't something that I just sat down and spent 30 minutes on. I had to kind of work on it throughout the week. So, things along those lines that might be projecty. Those are your weekly MITs, and maybe it's even helpful to think about what are my daily MITs, like what's really important for me to get done today. And, for example, for me, one thing I really want to get done over the next day or two is a love note out to the whole community. And so that is something that is an MIT. Right. And, my hope is that at some point, maybe I'll be able to get back to the weekly ones. I just, again, this summer, as I was doing a bit of reflection, kind of pulling back. And then, of course, we lost Belle Starr, which sent me down like an even longer healing track. I just was like, okay, what can I let go of or just take some pressure off myself to constantly be doing? Instagram posts filled with tranquility tips and updates, weekly podcasts, weekly, which I have kept up, thank goodness, weekly newsletter. These are just things that I had to do a little bit of shuffling and letting go. And so for you, what might be those some MITs that really still resonate for you where you are right now and knowing that they could shift? And what I mean by that is like, okay, it is very important to me. It is a priority and a value to be in touch with you, my community, weekly, particularly via the love notes. And yet, from a resource of time and energy, I had to take a step back, A, to do some healing, but B, to also do some reflecting on how best can I use my time and energy as I enter this brand new year. All right, number 5, try the Pomodoro technique. So this is something fun that we do in the coterie. Is every month we get together and we spend 1 hour doing the Pomodoro technique, and I call it co-creating sessions. So basically, the Pomodoro technique is 2 25-minute chunks. You know what? If 25 doesn't work for you and you want 15 or you want 45, you do it. Just because this is kind of the way it's like quote unquote done doesn't mean that you can't make it work for you. But the idea is that we hit a timer and we sit down and we really focus for that time. We're not popping back and forth, handling emails, checking Instagram, things along those lines. We are dedicated to a chunk of time focusing on a creative project. And for you, even in your work, say you write, briefs, you're a lawyer, you write briefs. Well, okay, what if you had chunks of time that were dedicated to that versus being pulled in multiple directions? And also, it's helpful. The idea with the Pomodoros is after 4, you take a 15 to 20 minute break. And in between each Pomodoro, you take a 5-minute break. So really interesting. There's apps for this and all sorts of great stuff if you're interested. But many people find it quite helpful as we think of balancing our time and our energy. Number 6, batch tasks and single task. Okay, so this is something that I've really worked on over the years because it's challenging, right? When we wear so many different hats, we're taking them on, we're taking them off, we're doing various things that it's like, okay, how can I wear my podcast hat and record a few episodes, right? Versus like one episode at a time. How can I sit down and maybe pull together the structure of a few love notes rather than one at a time? So that's the idea of batching. Many people do this even with meal planning, right? They'll sit down and they'll be like, okay, Sunday night, I'm going to make a few meals that I can freeze easily and that will get me through the week, right? So that's called batching. So it means collecting a group of similar activities and doing them all at the same time. So batch replying to emails rather than checking, every 5 minutes or in between clients or appointments, things along those lines. And I know I'm so guilty of that. And it's one of those things that I keep trying to get better at. And I do find that when I set aside time to actually handle email versus checking it repeatedly, it's just so much better. And one place I've been able to do that very well is Facebook, because I'm pretty much done with Facebook and plan to close my accounts in the new year. So towards the end of the year, probably early January, I'll be closing all of them. And it's not because I don't love connecting with people there. I just kind of want less. And not loving Facebook's values. So, for you thinking about so what I mean by saying and sharing all that is that, I may go to Facebook like once a day, right? In the past, I used to go multiple times a day to check in, to connect, what have you. And now it's like mainly do that through Instagram or through my private community in Mighty Networks for the annual program. Things along those lines allow me to have more connection. And I feel like a deeper connection, but without being pulled across multiple platforms. So think about household chores. Can you do, like you set aside where you're like, okay, I'm cleaning the kitchen, I'm doing laundry, I'm making meals, or something along those lines, right? And that's just that is batching. Reading assignments, making videos. And then also, when doing a task, avoid hopping from thing to thing. Let it be your sole focus. And you can get in the habit of that by practicing those Pomodoro techniques. And this helps maximize concentration and eliminate distraction. I even bought an app. This was probably early in the year called Freedom. I used it once, but I have it at the top of my computer. But it's one of those things that just shuts down everything. So even if you want to research while you're writing, you can't, right? Because the internet is shut down. And it will even do it kind of on your phone. So you can't be like, oh, I'll just pick up my phone and check here. Nope. Shuts it down for, a period of time. And you choose that. Anyway, I thought, okay, this is going to help me because I can't stop myself from going and researching or looking at this or looking at that while I'm trying to write. So if that's helpful to you, particularly if you're in the middle of a project and you really want to devote time and energy, you may have to trick yourself with an app like Freedom. So number 7, mindful food and drink. Very helpful as we think about the week ahead. So little things like buying local when you can, toting your own tea or coffee to work or doctor's appointments. I always have my water bottle with me. It's like my security blanket. And sometimes I'll even have water bottle and then a reusable tea. I guess you call it, it's not really a mug, but kind of canister bottle of sorts. And what I've been doing lately is a matcha powder, some sugar, brown, or what's it called? Cane sugar, and some ice. Right. So it's just like a really yummy treat. So those are 2 things that I typically will tote with me. Inviting friends over for dinner versus going out to eat. Trying economical, healthy recipes. Right. So check out, you guys. There's so many yummy vegetarian sides, especially if you want to forego the turkey. And if you would like to have, all the yumminess that comes with the Thanksgiving meals. From a veg perspective, lots of really kind of easy, healthy recipes out there. Buy essentials in bulk. Meet friends for dessert versus an entire meal out. Grow your own food. and create a food budget. So I track my spending in Mint, and, it's really interesting how quickly a few meals out adds up, especially if you're trying to kind of stick within a specific budget. So maybe thinking about what would be my ideal meals out budget, groceries budget, things along those lines for the month, and then see, can you stay within that? And if not, kind of what's the challenge? It's like, oh, I had a glass of wine with that meal and that was $15, and that just kind of sent me over. Well, next time, can I just maybe have water or like a cup of tea with it? Just small things that can make big shifts. Number 8, go DIY. So make your own cleaning products, right? By blending 2 tablespoons white vinegar, 1/2 cup baking soda, 1/2 cup liquid Castile soap. I love the rose. 10 drops of lemon and peppermint essential oils, and 1/2 cup water. Now you can find all sorts of recipes online if I rambled that off too quickly. Create gifts for special occasions, right? The holidays are coming, rather than buying them all. What about making some, or, doing your own gift wrap or something that just really brings a DIY aesthetic to what you're gifting. So making candles, super fun. Granola and putting it in a Darling mason jar. Bath scrubs, putting it in a mason jar. Peppermint spray, distilled water, some peppermint oil and a spray, squirt, squirt, you're good to go. And of course, baked goods are always yummy and fun. So are there some gifts that you could actually make this year rather than having to purchase more items? So 2 more. Shopping. So skip browsing to invest in a few signature quality pieces. Now, I don't know about you, but those Instagram ads get me. They get me so often. And I'm like, how do you know what I want? Just this morning, I was looking at Instagram and there was this scarf that was created to use for your Apple Watch band. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. Okay. It's $25, but it had a 50% off coupon. But I was like, do I really need it? Okay. No, I don't. And so I didn't buy it, but I'm still thinking about it. But, we could probably take our own scarves and make a watch band for it. I was like, that's just so cute and clever, right? So, we have to be careful because they target us because they know I'm always getting tea ads and face serums ads and, vegan bag ads. And it's just like, oh my goodness, black clothing ads. It's crazy. So if you can invest in just a few quality pieces and then, a small budget to allow yourself to, fun little accessories or, things along those lines, then it's like you're not having to be constantly like shopping, right? Because that can become somewhat addictive. And I know a lot of people fell down that rabbit hole during the pandemic, which I know we're still in, but particularly at the start of it. Use what you have. I look at my counter in my bathroom and I'm like, really, do I need this many serums and supplements and moisturizers? It's ridiculous. Again, some are Instagram ads, but, also others were just like, oh, let me get like a duplicate of it because when it runs out, I don't want to, be without for a few days. I mean, just little things like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have got to trim that down. The good news is we're doing, we're having a kitchen and a bathroom remodel in the new year. And so that's clearly going to mean that I have to take everything out of the bathroom and everything out of the kitchen. And I think doing that will just be so helpful to be like, okay, what do I need? What do I use? What moisturizer have I had for 10 years? Because I got in a goodie bag that I can let go of, right? So, things along those lines can be quite helpful if you think about using what you have. Joining the free cycle network. I mean, there's so many things out there, such as, I think on Craigslist Marketplace, or Facebook Marketplace, all these sorts of places where you can, get rid of things that you're not using. We have a lot of the little libraries here in my neighborhood, so I just tend to take like stacks of books over. Invest in experiences such as concerts, museum exhibits, penny picking, which we have in the area in May, which is so fun, versus stuff that has to be dusted, right? So experiences are so great. I'm going to be in New York with a girlfriend the second weekend in December, and she flies home midday on Sunday. So another friend and I, she reached out last night and she was like, the Nutcracker, ABT's doing the Nutcracker and we can go at 5 on Sunday night. And I was like, because my train isn't until 9. That is an experience. That is something that is worth an investment to me, right? Everyone's different. But rather than collecting more tchotchkes, can we go and see something that moves us, like literally moves us, brings me to tears every time? Concerts, particularly female artists or Garth Brooks, but also the arts. And then also before buying, ask yourself if it will bring you value now and in the future, and if you really need it. Sometimes too, say it's a larger purchase, it can be like, okay, let me sit on this for a day and see if I'm still like, I must have this, I need this, or I need to get this for so-and-so, they must have this. Just kind of sitting with it. And then, of course, the other piece that I want to mention there, as I said, buying only essentials and consumables. Consumables are like serums, okay? That's a consumable, but you don't need too many of them. But, things like coffee, I tend to get that from my partner constantly. Bags of tea, that's something I buy a lot of, but I really need to. The other day, I was in front of this beautiful tea selection. I was like, nope, you have to drink down some of what you have before you keep adding more. But right, that's a consumable. That's something that does not need to be dusted, right? It is something that we will use, just like an experience, which is just, I just think experiences are the best. Okay, last but not least, number 10. Number 10 is save. Set aside as much as you can for your rainy day or retirement fund. Consider having 5 to 10% taken out of your check before it hits your bank account so you won't be tempted to spend it all. And automate payments to avoid late fees. And the other thing kind of here with this is if you are self-employed, hello, I have been since 2000, you really need to set aside about 25% of what your income is for taxes, right? So then if you want to do more for savings, that's another 5 to 10%. So that comes up to about 35%, right? That you are setting aside before thinking like, this is my money to spend. So number 1, take a Sabbath. 2, say no. 3, organize. 4, MITs. 5, try the Pomodoro technique. 6, batch tasks and single task. Number 7, mindful, food and drink. Number 8, go DIY. 9, shopping. And 10, save. So I hope that's helpful as you think about, all right, how do I manage, this upcoming month and a half, 2 months, really. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is just read to you the introduction of Hip Tranquil Chick and the Daybook. So again, in celebration of 15 years, I can't believe it. I didn't even realize it was 15 years until somebody posted, I think it was even my mom on Facebook, like posting the 10-year anniversary or the 13-year anniversary, because I did events for both of those. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the 15th year. So, it's just fun to kind of honor these milestones. So I'll just read a little bit of this introduction. And if you have Hip Tranquil Chick, it's page 1 through 3. So what lies before us and what lies behind us is nothing compared to what lies within us, Emerson. Tranquil Space began not quite a decade ago in my 1-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of an artsy DuPont Circle neighborhood. There was little to no yoga to be found in Washington, D.C. It was an edgy thing to do, not receiving the interest or respect it now commands. I was working as a paralegal, reading The Artist's Way, and seeking a more creative way of life, longing for kindred spirits and hoping they existed in D.C., but where to find them. With visions of special strangers huddled around my fireplace, drinking tea, doing yoga, and connecting, I began hanging flyers around DuPont. This was a big step. I realize now, but it felt so natural at the time. Inviting strangers into one's living room is not a habit I recommend. But my faith in the practice of yoga and my desire for community demanded it. Surprises continued to come my way. The joy of brewing a homemade batch of chai for every class. The excitement of watching students' eyes light up as they truly felt a pose. The pleasure yoga was bringing to people who met through class. Many who went on to marry. It's just so funny. The love with which I approached the business. With a psychology degree and no clue about business, I began with a focus on the special details. Ribbons wrapped around inspirational quotes that greeted the students on their mats, aromatic candles, a blazing fire to welcome students, chai served in porcelain teacups, homemade business cards, and brochures. I loved putting time into making people feel nurtured. I wanted students to walk into class and feel welcomed and accepted, not judged. I especially wanted women to find a safe space to work with their bodies, develop a sense of empowerment, and realize the importance of taking steps toward their idealized life. Thus, Tranquil Space began. We've grown beyond my wildest dreams. I'm constantly amazed at the sacred souls I've met, which would never have happened had I not hung up that first neighborhood flyer. The reason I started the studio has been an important reflection of mine since the very first class. And then I just go on and I talk about that yoga's a lifestyle, right? Full of mean reds, which comes from Breakfast at Tiffany's, paramours, and deep twists. Hip Tranquil Chickness is a movement to live in a way that shines. After all, that's why we are here, to shine as boldly and brightly as possible. The mission of a Hip Tranquil Chick is to incorporate hipness and tranquility into all aspects of life, right? And then I go on and on. And so Hip Tranquil Chick, right? It's just crazy because I know for many of you, this was your first introduction to me and my work. And I so appreciate it because it really was such a gift from my soul in the fact that it meant so much to me bringing this baby to life. And I'm working on my memoir right now, and I'm writing about the time in my life as I came up with this concept and was working with an agent and getting her an edited chapter 1. And what I'm writing about was what was actually going on in my life at the time at the studio. And it was like really, really, really challenging. And it's just so funny to read this and think about, wow, during that time, I was really struggling with some studio stuff and, yet trying to bring this baby to life. And so it means so much to read even that introduction and be like, wow, it was a hard time and you pushed through it. I remember getting her the chapter 1 kind of after the dust settled a little bit. And I remember her comment was kind of like, so something along the lines of, it's like, does this feel like this is your best work? And I was like, oh my God, it's not. B, I was so lucky to actually finally get this to you after kind of being underwater for a month. And then, but then we were able to kind of like get back in the groove. But it's just interesting, right? How during our challenges, there's still like, it's like the lotus in the mud, right? There's still the chance to bring forth something that is going to mean a lot to someone else. And so many of you have mentioned like, I was drawn to the book spine at Barnes & Noble, and I knew I had to have it, and I've been following you ever since. Like, I've heard that from a few of you, and it means so much because I really fought to get leopard print on the book spine. So I'm so glad that it caught your eye. Okay, so the last thing I just want to mention is the Daybook. And I'll just read a tiny bit about this. And if you check out the blog post, which again, I'll put in the show notes, you'll see where I show the different versions from over the years. And you can just get a little bit of history, about this baby, this creative baby I brought into the world. And what's fun is there's so many beautiful, creative planner options out there now. And, so this at the time, I felt like there really weren't many. And so it's fun to see all the different options that people have at their fingertips now. And one question I get a lot is, I want a spiral bound. And so one thing to keep in mind is when you buy this book, you can get it off Amazon. There's, of course, there'll be a link in the show notes. But what you do is you take it to your local print shop. They chop off the binding, and then they spiral it. And so it's really nice because, as you may recall from a previous podcast that I did with Barbara, who's Daybook connoisseur, she talked about how she would actually break it up into quarters. So she would have 3 months at a time with her Daybook, and then she would insert other pages from other offerings and events that she'd been to of Tranquility du Jour and beyond. And so I just love that because you really, really can personalize this book to make it your own. So this is page 6 from the current Daybook, which came out in 2019. And I start with bonjour. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. Annie Dillard. And then I go on to say, as a longtime lover of paper planning, I set out to blend function and style by releasing the first colorful Tranquility du Jour Daybook in 2012. Chock full of tips, tools, and checklists for living with productivity and tranquility. Inside this edition, you'll find 4 seasonal layouts, 12 monthly layouts, 60 weekly layouts, invitations to pause, lists to complete, plant-based recipes, and more. So then I have the different ways to work with this, how to plan your year, seasonally, monthly, weekly, daily, and or make it your own, right? So at the end I have, or scrap this whole system that I've laid out for you and make it entirely your own. Pick it up when you crave a reset and wish to reflect and dream, doodle, chop off the binding at your local print shop and turn it into a pink or gold spiral-bound book. Personalize it with ephemera, colored markers, washi tape, and your deepest desires. My vision for this pink planner is for it to serve as a catch-all for your dreams, day's events, and deepest thoughts. Pin your plans, explore new tools, and check the boxes. So fulfilling. Join the, I have joined the private TDJ Facebook group, which I no longer have because that turned into the Insiders group, but to connect with like-hearted planners, grab an assortment of bonuses, and may this be a year filled with tranquility. So it's been fun to see the evolution of this Daybook, and I do believe this is my final version, again, which came out a couple of years ago. So if you're interested in that, pick it up. You can also, of course, order the PDF through me. And then, then you would have to do the printing and the binding and all of that. And it's 8 by 8.5. So it's square. So if you printed it, it would come out, with square with some white spaces above and below. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of give a peek into these 2 anniversaries and say thank you for your support. Thank you so much. And also to share these 10 resources and tips for really taking good care and control of your precious resources of time, energy, and money as we move into the end of this year and the beginning of next. Now, finally, let's stay connected. Sign up for Love Notes if you haven't already, especially because one will be going out today or tomorrow. Browse my 6 books and planner. I have a link to those in the show notes. And you can follow along me on Facebook for a bit, and then Instagram and YouTube. And I recently released a new video on the 10 types of wellness. And then finally, if you have a moment to share a review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, or Goodreads, I'd be so, so grateful. And I wanted to share the latest podcast review that I so, so appreciate it. So she writes, she's a Tranquility fan, and she writes, a weekly delight. I eagerly look forward to this podcast every week. Listening to it has enriched my life in such fun ways with all kinds of entertaining and useful info. Kimberly is a delightful host and warmly brings out the best in all her guests. The topics are wide-ranging, timely, and life-enhancing. I love it and wouldn't miss an episode for the world, which is so, so sweet. So thank you so much, Tranquility fan who wrote this. I very much appreciate it. And I just want to say a big thank you to you for tuning in. And I wish you a delicious and delightful week ahead.